This is Do It For a Living, your source for inside information on the future of automotive performance.
We really want to go to the distribution format. We want the guys that are talking to people on a daily basis to be able to have the education and the knowledge to really promote and sell the product. The shop owner is going to probably tell the customer which way they're going to need to go at this point.
What's holding you back from starting or growing your business into what it can be? Well, if you're listening to this, it's not a lack of information. What you're about to hear is all you need to get motivated and start making waves. Do It For a Living podcast details the journey of today's true players in their own words. Find out how they broke out so you can too. The time is now. The time is always now.
Welcome back. I have Greg Caloudas from GSC Power Division. They are a manufacturer of a lot of powertrain components in your cylinder heads, typically is what most people associate them with. They have a really cool product that has come out, I think, in the last year or so, is their billet camshafts for Evos, and I think it applies to every car they make them for. But I'll let Greg kind of explain what he makes. But Greg, how are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome this morning. Thanks for having me, Kevin.
Cool. So you are the owner and founder of this company, but I kind of want, before we get started on the company, I wanted you to kind of explain to us how you got involved with cars. What's your background? Take us back to when you were a kid.
Oh, God. When I was a kid, I don't know, I guess the first time I ever saw anything back then, it was probably a Lamborghini or a Ferrari, and it was just, 5 or 6 years old. It's just like, ooh, what's that flashy car? And I was always interested in it. Didn't matter from that point. It's kind of the rest is history, so to speak. I mean, early on, it was cars, it was boats. Fortunately, if it could have been planes, I'm sure it would have been. But if pretty much it have involved going fast or taking chances, I enjoyed either the car or the point of doing it.
So did you when did you get started actually? I mean, you're a manufacturer, you don't really service vehicles. So what kind of drove that interest of making things, creating things? Ever since I was a kid, I've always taken things apart. I can tell you numerous times I've gotten yelled at by parents to you just got that, why is it in 1,000 pieces and you're never going to put it back together? And it's just, trying to figure out how things work and looking at, how somebody made something and maybe applying something, some different idea or something that I've taken apart that doesn't even associate to it to tweak or tune. To be honest, I never entered into, the idea of manufacturing when I first started out. I was just a car guy who really got a kick out of modifying and tuning and what the next step of in a build was going to be. So I was just intrigued by the whole idea of, I can take this, 200 or 300 horsepower car and, spend some money and add turbos and be able to tune it with standalones or, even just simple piggybacks way back when. And you could turn a $20,000 car into, this supercar that, couldn't be touched by, Ferraris and Porsches. So it always really started way back then. I mean, so were you tinkering with one of your own cars? Did you have like a import or domestic car?
So my first dabble in an import was actually a 1994 Toyota Supra. And I can tell you that I think I always had domestic cars kind of in high school and college. I mean, I had like a Z28 Camaro and a Corvette. And I actually had one of the god-awful C4 Corvettes, but it had a 6-speed in it. And it's like the most unseen thing in a C4 Corvette is a manual. So I was at an 8th Mile drag strip in Savannah, and one of the guys that owned a local stereo shop had a black 93 Supra, and I think he pretty much had like the first Greddy T78 kit in the country put on the car. And I don't know, it's just as soon as I kind of walked up and saw the car and heard it and then just heard the turbo spool on the track, that was like it. That's all it took. I was like, I got to get one of those. So
what kind of time frame was this?
That was back in 2000, 1999.
Okay, so kind of like the, I guess when imports started getting very big, right?
I'm in South Carolina, and, I was in Georgia, and imports big is, an understatement. We went to the track, and if it didn't, if it wasn't old and loud and have a carburetor on it, I mean, people didn't really care about it. So I got to say, it was definitely in front of a lot of the import scene that has kind of come in. But yeah, definitely at the beginning of it for sure.
And how old were you at this time?
I was in school. I was probably 22-ish, 21, 22.
Okay, so you were probably in college then.
Yeah. I mean, I was definitely in school when that all went down. And, to be honest, when I kind of got out of school, I was forced with whether I wanted to go get a real job, doing God knows what. I mean, my family was in the restaurant business and kind of morphed into the real estate business. So, the idea of talking about real estate all day doesn't really excite me, to say the least. And as much as I love to eat something, I can imagine serving food all day would suck.
So what was your degree in then? And did you finish?
I did finish. I have a business management degree. I kind of dabbled a little bit. I took a few engineering classes, but, to be honest, I had a lot of fun in college. I'm not going to lie. I played, we, messed with cars throughout that time, and I wasn't very focused.
Were you a heavy drinker then? Was a days of college? Is that what you remember? Or was it just dabbling with cars and having fun?
It was playing with cars, having fun. Of course, there was quite a few beverages consumed along the way. So I can tell you that the last thing that I really enjoyed doing was making that 8 a.m. class, especially if we'd gone to the track and been racing, or, God knows, spent how many hours at the bar. So yeah. Like I said, school's great if you can have time for
it. I can second these 8 a.m. classes are horrible, and I didn't even drink. I just couldn't stand those early morning classes. I'd fall asleep in most of them. So,
well, I can tell you, I fall asleep in almost anything. Sometimes I would have a class that really that kept me. I think physical geography was always very interesting, and I'm not sure if it was because the slideshow of the pictures that I was like, wow, that's really cool, and it just caught my attention, or it was the fact that it was like at 3:00 in the afternoon and it was before happy hour, so it was like it worked.
So you have a business management degree. Was that like something that interested you? What kind of drove that field of study?
I mean, I always felt like I would want to do something for myself versus having a marketing job, or I took some finance classes, and the idea of doing things that were related to the financial sector, so to speak. And I knew I was going to work for myself, and I felt like why not have some management, because hopefully I'll have to manage people or a business, and maybe I'll get something out of this.
So you had an entrepreneurial spirit about yourself.
Oh yeah, God. I mean, even in college, we were buying and selling things, whether it was, through it definitely wasn't through a legitimate business as far as a business, license and everything, buy and sell. But I mean, it was always buying and selling, car parts, trading it with people, selling it, whatever, it didn't matter.
Making money in some form or another.
Somehow. I'm not really sure, like looking back on it, it's like, God, how did I ever pay for the stuff that I did? It's kind of interesting. But, going back to cars, as far as, when I first started playing, with the Corvettes, we never really, in the Camaros, we never really got into tearing them apart, so to speak. We'd put an exhaust system on them and an intake. And that's really when I got the Supra, and it was like, okay, I got the Supra, and it's this heavy fat pig, and it's slow as crap. And it's like, I really like the way it looks, but, let's start tearing stuff off. And I remember it was like, there was a list that was out, way back when, kind of before forums started. And it was just like, there's these simple mods you could do, put a downpipe on it, get rid of the cats, put an exhaust on it, do an air intake. You put a boost tee in and you can spike the stock turbos, and next thing you know, you put a Super AFC on it and a boost controller, and you got 400 to the wheels, and it's like, oh, now this thing's starting to get a little bit interesting. And being in the South, it's 100 degrees, and for 3 months of the year, and the cars get kind of boring when it gets that hot, especially with stock intercoolers and things along that line. So I just kept finding myself, kind of tweaking as we went along. It was like, oh, this thing sucks in the summertime, so let's put an intercooler on it. Oh, that's a little bit better, and it snowballs. It's crazy how they kind of allow for it.
So you're talking like the email lists that were the thing at the time, right? Because I think I was involved in some of those for a little while as well, huh?
Yeah, there was mkiv.com had like just a straight email list, and you'd get 50 or 100 emails. Maybe it was 30 or 50 emails a day, and it was just like a chain email. Mm-hmm. So it was good, and then the site had a bunch of different people would post pictures or how-to stuff, and you could kind of follow that stuff and go from there and kind of start this process. It's funny. I know you had Nero and Bottle on.
Reed interviewed them. Uh-huh.
Sure. And I can remember like in the, back in those days, and I don't remember how I stumbled across, one of their web pages. And, I always had this thing in my head that Nero was this like super Asian, tuner down in Florida. And, talking to him, it was like, oh, what do I need to do next? What do I need to do next? And Nero, we got to a point where it was like, oh, you need to put these pulleys on there. And I'm like, okay, what's that going to do? Send them. Ship them. I put these pulleys on, and I'm like, what in the hell did I just put aluminum pulley? I was like, this is not doing anything for me. So,
whatever they could get their hands on, they could sell you, huh?
I mean, it's like, what do you need? It's like, let's just sell this kid whatever he can buy. Just keep throwing stuff at him, whatever you do. But it's an interesting industry for sure. Once it kind of got into the parts, it was always very. I reached this point where I was doing it privately and kind of just got out of college, and I was like, these parts are really expensive. Maybe I just get a license and I'll buy some parts and I'll sell them to, some people on online, and, maybe I can make some side money for this, and then I'll just get a real job so that I can, afford to live, so to speak.
So this is kind of ramping up into the first business then.
Yeah. I mean, basically that's what started it. I mean, I then decided it was like, okay, let me start this business. And I tried to start it as a side business, to be honest. But, I've always been impressed by people that start side businesses and actually make them successful, because I could never do that. Time is your biggest advantage in business, for sure.
So how did you get started then? You finished college and then you're just dabbling with selling these parts on the side, and you just made it a business right away? Is that how you did it? Yeah, I mean,
I just created. Back then there was the online presence of buying stuff. Just if you had a WordPress site, so to speak, or just a simple website. I mean, that's all that was really floating.
Mm-hmm.
In 01-ish. 2000, and it's people were looking online if they could, they weren't buying a lot of online parts. There wasn't the stores that are available now. And I mean, even Amazon was, heck, it was a bookstore.
Yeah.
I can promise you, I don't think I ever went on it either.
Back when eBay sold nothing but used stuff.
Exactly. And I mean, I can honestly say that we had, eBay stuff that we'd take stuff off and put it on eBay, and it's like I took off these turbos and sold them on eBay, and I made more off of selling the used turbos off of a car than I did, selling the new one to put it on. So, and it really did start out of, as so many people say, it's kind of started out of the house. I mean, I went after kind of the web portal idea of selling parts on a website, being able to answer your emails, check what came in as far as orders, and then drop ship them from different manufacturers or distributors. And then, the idea is to be able to have a day job and do something, which, to be honest, never really
that never really transpired. I mean, I think I did get my real estate license way back in 2001 or two, and was just not about it at all.
So you created a business, and was that the GSC Motorsports?
That started as just GSC Motorsports, which is crazy. It is my initials, and that's kind of what we started out as. Like I said, it's like, well, I don't know what to call it. And a buddy of mine was like, man, back then there was like these Goodyear tires that were GSCs, and he's like, you could just roll with that. And I'm like, that's not a bad idea. It's like, nobody knows what it means anymore. Grand Sport Coupe and, Georgia, South Carolina Motorsports. I was like, yeah, whatever, that'll work.
Perfect.
The 5-minute name, and somehow we can't, shake it even all throughout the years, even with the coming into selling or manufacturing, it was always like we needed to have this short little, acronym for something so that people would be able to spit it out quickly, which is where Power Division the idea that we would, have it as Power Division would be the name of the company for our manufacturing and private label stuff, so to speak.
Okay. Was selling these parts profitable enough to survive off of when you got started?
Oh, good. Yeah, I would say not really, no. The problem is trying to, it's like, ooh, I really want this part for my car, but I need to buy like 3 of them so that I can sell, 2 of them and hope that I can, find something else to sell and have one for my car.
Okay, so you're spending as much money as you're making essentially just to make your car fast.
Without a doubt. Yeah. And we advertising was one of those things that back then it was, you thought the idea was that you went into magazines and you'd get a page in a magazine and automatically people would call you, which to be honest was, it's interesting to see what's happened to magazines in the 15 years I've kind of been poking around in this industry.
Yeah, it is very different. I mean, it changes very quickly, which is wild. So.
Yeah, I mean, it really has. I mean, it's even, I can honestly say that I think in like 02, 03, it's probably late 03 was when we kind of went on and started taking on forums, because forums had definitely gotten traction by that point, and we started utilizing forums to kind of niche market to customers. And that was one of the things that I would say, when 02, 03, I had a friend of mine that was in school, was kind of in the same situation. He was like, I'm looking for, something to do that's not working at this car dealership selling parts. And I'm like, well, why don't we take a real stab at selling, high performance auto parts online? And, he was like, as long as you can pay me. And at that point I was kind of like, how is that going to happen? But yeah, I was like, well, as long as he can sell enough, I'm sure he can make it happen. And we kind of went after it. We were young, and he was willing to take a chance for a few months. And he had a 300ZX, and I had a Supra, and we decided to go after and start marketing and selling parts. Other people's parts, as far as everything was. Back then, most of it was Japanese, to be honest.
Yeah.
The U.S. tuners and manufacturers really hadn't started. And, I would get stuff from Bottle and Nero, and if for some reason we were, I was in Florida, I used to do the free freight program, where it really just meant you dropped off at Titan and shoved as much stuff in the back of the car as you could. And then you rolled out, so to speak. And went back to selling. And as crazy as it is, we never really got traction selling Supra stuff in the very beginning, because there were these, Titan and MVPs and back then Horsepower Freaks and SP Engineerings. And, there's just all these guys that had in Powerhouse Racing that were in that market. They were committed to that market, and they were supplying it. And it's just, we were kind of trying to break into it, and it was really hard. The guy's not going to call somebody they've never heard of out of South Carolina just because he's got a Supra, so to speak. I definitely was not, looked at as one of those guys that were, in warehouses with, even though Nero and Bottle were probably still out of their parents' house at that point.
It's intriguing that so many people actually started, with working with Titan. I've been down in that area, and I think even Jay at Real Street at one point in time had worked for them, I think, so.
Oh, I always give those guys credit for training half of Florida, especially as far as sales. But man, they definitely, were there in the very beginning and really went after it, so to speak. And my hat's off to them. They've done a great job with what they had over the years.
So you were competing with them essentially with selling parts, and your Supra market was driven by the fact that you had a Supra.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a general love for a car. I mean, it was like, hey, I know this thing. I take it apart. I use it. This is why I use this part in here. You should buy some.
So, at what point did you know that you could actually make a living doing it?
You kind of keep going back to that, and I kind of look at it like I don't really think I ever really knew that I could make a living doing it. I was just doing it. And we were doing other things. We were buying cars, whether they were sport compact related or something else, to kind of, maybe we would fix them if we found something that was wrong, or put a motor in, a Civic to get it, to sell it to make enough money to kind of increase the inventory or buy more parts for our cars or whatever.
So you were working on building an inventory then, not just drop shipping everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of realized that in our industry, if you have it, you can sell it. When everybody goes on back order, if it's sitting on your shelf, somebody wants it, they're going to buy it from you. Mm-hmm. So we were, and the idea of kind of the direct-itis, of I want to be direct with every company. Back then we didn't have the Turn 14 distribution or the, now what Real Street is, or Rally Sport or Motivicity to supply, parts. I mean, there wasn't huge inventories of Go Fast parts that were out there. I mean, there was a couple of West Coast distribution, but they didn't really do much for us on the East Coast. So we just kind of went direct to the manufacturer, so to speak, and would do a buy-in, bring in some stuff that we knew would kind of sell and kind of turn it, and that's how it kind of went.
Okay. And you never had to even think about going to work for somebody else. This kind of just was working for you, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's like, did I write myself a paycheck? No. Did I survive? Yeah. I mean, it was one of those things that it kind of just happened. I mean, I knew that I didn't want to go to work for somebody else. And if I could get some traction, that it really could make something out of it. So, I really focused and concentrated. We spent some time kind of developing some Yahoo stores and some higher end. We actually had a company that made us a higher end website for us, probably back in 2002. Because I had the idea that I really wanted somebody to go online, click buy, and we would fill the order on the back end and make sure it got to them. Mm-hmm. The downside is that I'm not computer based, so to speak, and that's just, it really would take somebody that understands, back then especially, how to develop that. Mm-hmm. So that's where we were. I mean, I think in 2003, 2004, we started advertising on the Evo Evolution M, and we had Hotchkiss suspension parts, to be honest. And I mean, we just posted, we had a guy that had one, and we threw a set of springs on it, and it was like, man, these things actually fit and look good. It's not, slammed completely, and it handles well. And we started selling those, and it was like, I mean, the Evo guys were on it. I mean, we really found kind of our market at that point. That we would bring these out, and if it looked good and it performed, I mean, the guys were into it. I mean, they wanted it.
Okay, and you keep saying we, and that was your buddy who had the 300ZX. He is, I'm guessing, your first, and he's not a owner, is he?
No, the only person that's ever owned it is me. I mean, at that point, it was, to be honest, it was a couple of us in the office. I had a friend of mine that decided that he wanted to go into pro racing, Lee Keene, and he kind of knew me from Georgia Southern in school, and he's like, hey, I want go pro racing, or I'm going to college isn't for me, and I want to try to do this as a profession, but I need a place to work, kind of during the week, because I'm going to not be there, Thursday or Friday, a weekend or two a month. And I'm like, yeah, come on, let's try this too. And Stefan was the other gentleman's name.
Okay.
So we had moved out of, the house per se, and we were in just like a, 800 square foot office with like a single garage, so to speak.
To store inventory in.
Yeah. I mean, really, it was just a place to get out of the house.
Okay.
I'm one of the people that I got to go to work in the morning. I got to go somewhere. I need to switch gears. Like if I'm sitting at the house, at some point I'm going to walk to the refrigerator and grab a beer out and say, well, the phone's not ringing, let's go do something fun or whatever. So yeah, we were out of there, and, there was 2 or 3 of us kind of in that office. And we just sold parts.
So having a business management degree really has got to have helped this a little bit. I mean, you had an understanding of what to do and how to do it, right?
I would say, looking back on it, do I remember much from what we did in school? They teach you structure and how things are supposed to be laid out in kind of general terms and things, and an understanding of it. What we were doing is not, there's no book, or there was no classes that you could take per se back then, for sure. I mean, the general business management was to teach you how to how a business should be structured. Okay. And I can tell you, we were very sloppy in those days.
Okay. And they definitely don't tell you that to be successful requires an immense amount of time, right?
The whole idea of, we'll just do this for a few hours and we'll make some money and, it'll all be good and we can go play is, once you realize that's not the case, that's when you realize you're actually in business, because it's tough, man. And you got to put in the hours, and that's what it takes.
So has location played a role in your success?
I heard you ask that question, or Reed asked that question on one of the other podcasts. And I got to think, in our industry, in manufacturing, yes, location has played a huge role into what we're capable of. But in working on cars and selling parts, not at all. It was internet. I mean, where you're at on the internet is the most important side of it.
Okay. So bring us from GSC Motorsports to when you started manufacturing your own parts, and I guess you transitioned to Power Division, right? So kind of tell us about that.
Well, so I had this idea that I wanted to be able to support, reselling parts, but we also wanted to kind of start our own line, something that we could, put our name on, and the end customer would have to really come to us, and we'd have to supply them, whether it was through distribution or whatever. If somebody wanted to buy our product, we needed to make something, but I still wanted to keep the parts side of it. This is probably early 2005. We were in the Evo market. We were selling a lot of parts in the Evo market. And a gentleman off the West Coast came to me and said, hey, I've got a bunch of camshafts. I know that Evos are really big on putting HKS cams in them. And I'm like, yeah, we sell a good amount. If we could get more of them, it'd be great. And he said, well, I have a bunch. And I said, well, they're HKS cams? He said, no, they're not. They're made, by a similar place that makes them. And I said, okay. I said, well, can we market them as our own? He's like, yeah, that's fine. You can put whatever you want on them. I don't care. So we kind of looked at them and said, okay, we put them in a car, and I'm like, wow, these kind of work. So, it wasn't a lot of cams. It was like 50 camshafts. So we threw them, kind of threw them out there. And as crazy as it was, there was this huge missing, HKS was waiting on a container, and people at that point wanted things very
fast,
quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was like, yeah, we sold some. We pretty much sold all of them, I would say, within, a few months' time, which was pretty impressive considering there was this, new company that nobody had ever heard of. God, there wasn't even a web page. It's like, yeah, GSC's making cams and selling them, outside of an HKS cam at that point. Really, I mean, nobody was there. So we kind of sold through them, and I was like, wow, that actually caught some traction. So, the next thing up was, well, we need to buy some more of these. And the guys that had put them in cars were putting dyno sheets up, and they're like, yeah, these things work great. And I'm like, oh, maybe we found something here. And it's like, what did we find here? So, that idea of let's take it apart and see what we can do. So to be honest, like way back then we went in and I really just put I put it to the test as far as what I could self-educate for, so to speak.
Uh-huh.
I love to say that this industry is full of a bunch of risk takers and people that want to make something faster that isn't. So, they're always thinking outside of the box. Well, let me put this turbo on, or let me try this exhaust, or let me try this setup with a cam, or let me, put these different valves in here and open up a port and see if that, makes more power. So it's kind of one of those things that it's like, well, we've obviously got a market here that we can supply to. So we need to tackle this. We need to understand this better. We need to figure out what people aren't doing that we can do better. And I know we can do better than what HKS kind of has, because somebody just sent me these things and sold them to us, and they did better than HKS. So there's more here. So, at that point, we kind of really jumped in 2 feet and said, I started to look at, kind of different markets and also kind of what went into a cam. I mean, how different things like, the shape of the lobe or the lift, or, the turtle duration or center lines and lobe centers, and everything really affected, the engine internally, as far as, what needs to be improved, what's our limitation, where do we run into issues, what can we do to make these better. And we kind of bounced around a little bit with some private label manufacturing, and it was just to a point where we were like, we need to just at least be able to do the lobe shape, and we need to kind of have something that we can make our own and design. And, even if we get it manufactured by somebody else, it needs to be us and not, somebody else that we bought. Because if I'm going to put my name on it, which apparently everybody wanted, by just saying it was a GSC, that it's going to at least be something that we put together. Just so you realize, like that first batch of 50 cams, maybe we sold 100 of them that somebody else did. And really the next step was to go in and manufacture, or have manufactured for us, our own design. And it was something that we played around with and kind of came up with a couple of different profiles, had somebody grind them. We tossed them in a car and we kind of liked what they did. I mean, it worked, whatever information that I had put into it and time definitely improved upon what was out there in the market.
It was really somebody gave you, or didn't give you, but sold you a set of cams that you branded yourself, and this kind of drove the idea that you could actually make your own product. And from after selling through those, you had already started to look into manufacturing your own cam, or at least have your own design profile and then have somebody make it for you. That's kind of the direction this is going.
Yeah, that is. I mean, that's really what we had kind of morphed into. I love to say that in manufacturing, it's great to know that you have a market if you're going to make something, whether it's private label or something else. The idea of, let me go spend a bunch of money having somebody make a lot of product under my own name and just throw it out there and see if it sells. I'm sure it works for some people with a lot more money than I had to put at it, but it was nice to know that we could sell something if we created it, as long as it worked.
Mm-hmm.
So really we kind of introduced, some CNC ground cams back in 2006 for the Evo. And I mean, that was kind of the start of, selling for the Evo 8 and then the Evo 9. And the Evo 9 was something totally different because, you had a MyVet gear, you had adjustability and the center line on the intake cam, which kind of gave us a little bit of range as far as what we could really produce. We could take advantage, not necessarily as much as like a VTEC cam where you've got, low lobes and high lobes, which you could take advantage of. Moving a center line, get some idle characteristics, which 90% of the guys that are, we're selling cams for still want to be able to drive it to cars and coffee, so to speak, or play with it and use it, even as a daily driver and be able to make, double the horsepower than what the engine kind of had to start with.
So you were saying that the location played it was very important for your manufacturing side of thing. What was it kind of like you're in NASCAR region where you had different manufacturers in your area? Is that how it helped?
Yeah, I mean, that being the case, we do everything kind of in-house now as far as machine tools, and as crazy as what people, might say is, well, where's this guy's formal training at, or where do they learn how to do what they do? And it's really, self-education in it. I mean, I can tell you that when we bought, our first CNC machine, the guy that we bought it from was out of North Carolina, was in the Mooresville area, a new equipment supplier. And I was like, hey, I want to make I need to make some retainers for some titanium retainers for our spring kits. And he's like, okay, well, what do you want? And I said, I don't know. I don't have a clue. I mean, sell me something. Here's a print. This is what I want to make. I need to make it cheaper than what I can buy it for. What do I need? And he was the first person, we went to the Akumas and the DMG Moris, which are very big, Japanese and German machine tool companies. And the first thing they were trying to do is sell me like a $300,000 turning center to make this, a little retainer. And I'm like, holy crap. It's like, is this really what it takes to do this? And the gentleman's name's Chuck Sheefen at ADEP. And he's like, this is a really simple part. He's like, I actually kind of quoted out a machine to do this for one of the NASCAR teams up there, but it's way more than what you need to do this. And he's like, I can, put this together, for like 80 grand and have you a machine to do this. And we'll do the setup on the first part. And I'm like, well, I think we can make that happen. And this is actually like 8 years ago. So
2008-ish time frame?
Yeah. So, I went in and we kind of bought that machine to really complement, make a part to complement our camshafts.
Okay.
And at that point, without being in the location we couldn't have had, there's not the abundance of knowledge of trained people outside of the country. I could bring somebody in to program the machine, or the tooling guys that come by that can help you pick tooling that can help process the part faster. And without being in this area, and it's not just this area. I mean, I love people that say manufacturing's dead in America, because it really isn't. I mean, it's alive and well. It's definitely more precision than it used to be. Mm-hmm. But there's tons of information. There's tons of people willing to help, because they want to sell you stuff to use, but it's there.
Okay. So have you ever doubted yourself and wondered, if this doesn't work, what am I going to do? And like, how did you overcome that feeling?
I think I did have a doubt. Like, am I really going to do this for the rest of my life? Like, am I going to sell parts for these cars or play with cars forever? That was the biggest concern I had. Doubt. No, we were just doing it, man.
Yeah, and it sounds like you were definitely motivated by what interested you, not by what was bringing the money in. I mean, you wanted to learn how to manufacture stuff, so you took the time to do it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's really what as crazy as it is, everybody's like, oh, you guys made cams. Yeah, we designed a bunch of cams, and they were CNC ground, and we kind of knew what to look for. But we really dug in when we kind of got that first machine, and it was like, wait a minute, this is awesome. We can shove this bar in the back, and we can and actually create something. And I mean, it was like, I think a light bulb really did go on in my head that was like, oh, we're going this way. I was like, it's not going to stop. Like, this is going to be interesting. And it has not stopped. I mean, we constantly add machines. I mean, I'm adding a machine this week. But, really to kind of timeline it, within 6 months of that machine, we got a second machine to actually transfer some of the load off of the first one for making retainers. And in this whole time, we had this large camshaft stuff that was really kind of working. You know, we had, at this point, it's probably what, 08, 09.
Mm-hmm.
I think when the market fell out in that time, I think there was, you know, it was like a November, and I just remember like all of the phones stopped ringing, and it was kind of one of those things that it was like, well, we got a little bit of time here. What's, you know, yeah, I know that the whole world's worried that America's going to go bankrupt, but, you know, why don't we spend a little bit of time and try to figure out what we can concentrate on at GSC to really take us to the next level? Because if we can survive this crash and get out of it, we're going to end up a heck of a lot better position than when we started it.
For sure.
And, you know, it was all eyes focused on manufacturing directly.
So,
and, you know,
you started dropping off the other people's part sales, and it's what you're doing, huh?
Yeah. You know, as crazy as it is, there's a guy out there that has kind of worked at a few companies and owns a web development or website company. His name's Matt Gold, and he I was talking to him one afternoon, and I was like, man, I don't know which way to go with this. Like, I just, you know, do I want to keep selling parts, or do I want to just concentrate? And he's like, you know, you really just need to draw a line in the sand and pick one way or the other and kind of focus. And I was like, you know, you're right. It's like, and I think we both know which way that's going to go. He's like, yeah, I think you're probably just going to be a manufacturer and decide not to sell other people's parts. And I was like, yep, that's what's going to happen. And that was probably like, that was kind of right in that realm, like 08-ish, 09.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of never really looked back. You know, we sold off the websites that we had that would resell stuff, and really kind of tailored it down to where there was two of us, you know, which was great because, you know, the market was crap.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, we're going to switch directions. We're not going to go under. I'm just going to switch directions completely. So that was kind of which way we decided to go. And you know, we're kind of living the dream, I guess.
So the three of you then were obviously marketing, design, and manufacturing all in one.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, that's not just that side. It's also like, you know, you're out there buying or looking at different people to manufacture things, you know, talking to different job shops and finding what they can produce, or what you know, what's closed and what works. You know, we always had that. Yeah, we could go to China, and sure, I've had emails go back and forth, and I've had products, you know, kind of made over there, samples, and like I've had them come in, and I'm looking at them, and I'm like, you know, when you put your name on something, it's not the same as like, okay, well, I just bought this company's product and I'm just going to sell it because it's their product and I'm going to make, you know, 15 points on it. And I don't really care.
Mm-hmm.
But when stuff comes in and it's got your name on it, you're just, you know, it's a different world, you know.
So what's the worst experience you've had in business?
I don't know. I kind of try to take the positive out of anything. I mean, I've had people say you can't do this, or this is not the right way, or you're not producing something, or you're not able to do it correctly. And I always kind of drive from that. I mean, can't really say I've had a worst experience. You know, everything's a learning.
Okay.
If you don't learn from your mistakes, you're really not doing it right.
So I've actually got one that, me and you were on opposite ends of this one. It was for the Evo 9s, and you probably already know where I'm going. On the intake cam on the Myvex early on, every manufacturer, I think even yourself included, I don't know where you guys were getting the cores from for this stuff, because I don't think it was your own core at this time, obviously. But
no.
The cams would break on the end of the cam there. And, I mean, like, was that one of those things that you're like, oh, shit, what's going on? I remember you actually had made a video of hitting one with a hammer. And
it's the truth. Like, you know, it's interesting if you I guess that you bring up a good point, and I'll say that that really drove us to make a better product.
Mm-hmm.
You know, is it the worst thing that ever happened? We didn't have as many people breaking ours as I think Kelford and Cosworth did.
Yeah, Kelford had a bunch of them. I had several Kelford and Cosworth roll through my shop broken. So,
and I mean, it's one of those things that and I had been in contact with both of those people. I mean, there's all these, this is a great industry as far as people sharing, knowledge, especially when there's an issue that both are faced with. So, my biggest competitor I look at is Kelford down in New Zealand, and there's not a doubt in my mind that I wouldn't pick up the phone and call those guys and have an honest conversation about, a situation like, hey, you guys have had these things snap. We had these things snap. What's your opinion on this? Realistically, and in that realm, it's kind of like we sit there and looked at it and we were like, what's wrong with this? It's the same, we've got the same strength. There's the same cross section as what's in the OEM ones. So why aren't the OEM ones failing? And it's like, these guys that are calling in with these heads that are popping off, yeah, we've had a couple of them like, oh, I was road racing or I was autocrossing and it snapped and I've been a bunch of valves. And it's like, okay, well, what's going on there? And it's like, all right, well, we need to make this thing at least stronger. So, we kind of went back to the foundry and it was like, hey, we need to change the front of this cam so it's stronger and we need to do it now. So we basically drew up and said, we want to move these oiling holes slightly and we want to, increase the cross section here. But in any doubt, it was still a cast cam. So we sent all these drawings in. And I remember I got an email from Kevin Band down at Kelford, and it was like, hey, I just got a batch of blanks in, and they look like somebody has shed some light on the boys at the foundry. And I'm like, wait a minute. I haven't even gotten blanks yet. And I sent them that drawing. And you're getting my changes that's definitely going to be helpful to all of us. But why is that happening? That's not right. And that's really what kind of made me step back, scratch my head, and it's like, all right, it's time to go to the next level.
Okay.
And I mean, you got to think that was what, 08, 09?
So basically your development time was shared with everybody because the same people pouring your blanks was pouring everybody else's blanks, sounds like.
For the most part. I mean, there's probably 3 to 4 manufacturers of blanks in the world, as far as semi-finished stuff. And yeah, I'd love to tell you that we could afford to get an entire foundry operating for, just one company, and it's just not in the cards.
Okay.
So yeah, you end up sharing a lot. It goes both ways.
So follow that story. So is that what drove you to develop your billet cam?
That really, that was kind of the defining point that was like, we need to take this to the next level. We want to make a part that's going to be able to handle more than what the factory, whether it be cast or assembled cam, is capable of. And it's absolutely kind of the point that I was getting at, is that's what said, you know what? The only thing that's going to handle 3 to 4 times the horsepower is going to be a fully forged, turned billet cam. And as much as people will think that it's like, hey, let me just go in and do it, it took 3 years for us to get machining correct and in place, a new grinder that could be capable of doing what we wanted it to do in place, actually construction and built for us. I mean, it was a long process. And I mean, it's ending now, in that we, are to market with everything that we kind of presently have. We've made improvements on it, but the future really is going to let us showcase what we're really capable of here.
And so you're doing, is it 100% of that in-house then, that cam?
Yeah. I mean, it comes in as a solid 2.5-inch bar of forged, steel. And we start from there and end up with a fully machined and heat treated and ready to rock and roll piece.
Awesome.
All of the QC is done here. All of the design is here. I mean, we've grown to the point of, we're still a small operation, but we have 9, and we have, engineers, an engineer on staff, as far as being able to, slap me upside the head. And when I say, hey, wait a minute, why can't we do this? And he comes back and says, well, the material can handle this much. So this is what we're going to do.
All right. So this bringing it in house also limits your exposure to like supply issues. Like you said, you actually got started because HKS couldn't get stuff from overseas to here.
Yeah.
And so now with you doing it all in house, you're not susceptible to those problems, right?
But we've created this other problem, and it's called production and really not being able to keep up with market demand.
Uh-huh.
So, our end customers, might not quite see as much of the unknown lead times that we were forced with dealing with foundries, especially in the cams. But, we still have, we run everything as a cell. So we have to do, we start with, we're making a blank, we're going all the way through the process, all the way out the door. And we have to set up and run those. And we can't just pop around because we ran out of 2J cams or Subaru cams or Evo cams. So we get into a rhythm of where it's like a three-month cycle for us to produce product.
Okay, and that's why even now your billet cams are sometimes hard to get a hold of, especially for Evos. They must sell very quickly, or you're not making enough of them. Is that kind of the or just manufacturing capability?
We really can't make enough of them.
Okay.
To satisfy it. Our numbers are really where they always have been, but it's a matter of we have to continue to invest in the business and add more equipment to be able to produce more. They are hard to get, and it's because people do like the fact that it's a competitively priced to what we had in the past, with the performance that they were used to, and now you're really on a forged blank that you're not going to have that snapping issue or the head breaking off, so to speak. I mean, if you break one of those off, you call me and I'm going to high five you. I'm going to fly to Texas and high five you.
Yeah, I haven't had one break in probably 10 years. 2000, there was just, it was really early on that they broke. And like I said, it was even Force Performance claimed that theirs would never break. And I had a customer break one of theirs and they were like, nope, didn't happen. I was like, I'm telling you, man, it broke. I don't know what else to say. So
it's one of those things. It's a cast cam, and if it gets shocked weird, it would cause it. To say that what we changed in that core was that drastic, that would have been like the make or break. It really wasn't. It was, you radius an edge a little bit more so that there's more strength there, and you decrease the depth of a groove, and it's helped. And people still broke those. And that was one of those things that if I felt like we fixed it with the cast and we never had to worry about it again, would I have, invested millions of dollars into, making cams? Probably not, because, even those had a tendency, you'll get a wild story of somebody on a hill climb in, Europe, and it's like, hey, yeah, I had a problem with the cam. It snapped the head off. And it's like, that's not good. You're still alive. At least you're emailing me. So let's talk about what's going on there. But yeah.
So what's something you're doing right now that has you fired up?
It's really just a matter of expansion. We're kind of excited to see some of the direct injection and the fact that we're able to play with the drive lobe of a cam, which drives the high pressure pump, and we can change that to really help. I shouldn't say help. We can change the shape or the lift on that drive lobe and affect the pump per se,
the fuel pressure.
Yeah, so I feel like that more than just letting air in and out of a cylinder with lobes, we're going to be able to probably help supply more fuel volume as well in the future. And really, it's right now it's really just all about billet cams and growth here, at least on our side.
Okay, so I wanted to take a second and share some information about our partners. Before we continue on, I wanted to take a second and tell everyone about My Shop Assist. If you own or work for a performance shop of any type, take some time to think about how organized and efficient your operation is. Our goal at Do It For a Living is to tell success stories in the industry and to educate you, the listener, on how to be successful in your business. My Shop Assist is a cloud-based shop management system developed to address the common shortcomings shops have. It enables you to track hours, pictures, notes, and even parts on every job at your shop. Manage your techs with the built-in calendar and assign tasks to them. The jobs can be exported to QuickBooks for accounting and billing. Customers can log in online and follow your progress on their car and digitally sign your work orders. MSA was designed to be simple to use and will help anyone from a one-man shop to the top-performing shops in our industry. Check out the system for free at myshopassist.com. So let's talk about GSC, I guess the more business side of things. So how big is the space you're in right now, and do you rent it or do you own it?
I had this wonderful idea back in the day that I would own the real estate. As I said, my family was into it. But when it comes to growing a business, you kind of reach this point where it's like, well, we need a bigger shop. Well, we need a bigger shop. Well, we need a bigger shop. And owning just kind of takes second wind, because otherwise you just collected a bunch of real estate and then you're managing that side of it as well. So we're in 10,000 square feet right now. We do not own it, and we'll probably be out of here within 2 years to go to 20.
Okay. So you're already filling it up then, it sounds like.
Yeah. Unfortunately, as easy as it is to move or as hard as it is to move for a shop or a distribution, I mean, you have no idea what it takes when you start moving, 11 CNC machines.
So you have a bunch of them, 11 of them, huh?
Yeah, we've kind of grown. It's one of those things. I know it sounds like, well, what have they been doing? But that's the case. I mean, we constantly are adding. I mean, and we're constantly trying to make more. So.
And have you ever actually written a formal business plan?
I kind of have an idea in my head as far as a business plan of what I'd like to see. I tend to jot down more annually what kind of goals we'd like to accomplish, and then just kind of, I do keep like a 5-year idea or just kind of a direction, and make sure we don't really kind of go away from our niche base or what we're good at, which is valve train.
Okay. And so you don't have it formally written down, but you're on target with kind of like the direction you needed to go, huh?
Yeah, when you look at kind of templates and stuff that are out there for business plans, I mean, it's almost like you're writing something for a bank because you think that they're going to give you money to invest in your dream or your life. And I can tell you that the bank has absolutely zero care about that. I mean, all they want to know is if they're going to get their money back. And that's it. So, I take parts of it and kind of just concentrate on the mission or something along those lines.
Okay. How many employees do you have?
There's 9.
Including yourself, or is it 9?
Including myself.
Okay. And do you find it difficult to manage everybody?
Yeah, it's like having a bunch of children.
I've heard lots of people say that answer.
It really is. I mean, I think that one of the hardest things is finding people that care about your product or about what they're doing on a daily basis. Whether it's as much as you or just, as long as they're focused. One of the guys that's been here for a long time, Travis, is kind of, my number 2. And I swear I've come in on a Saturday to do something, and he's been here, trying to figure out something himself. And it's, to find somebody that's out there that cares as much about the business and, the product that we produce as much as you is really hard to do. And it's one of those things that if I could, have a shop full of people that cared as much as, if I could have 20 employees that had the same passion that everybody here does, I would do it in a heartbeat. But it's really hard to find those folks.
It is. Yeah. And so, I mean, that's really the most difficult thing, I think, with growing a business is getting the people that care, about the product and to want to be there and help out and, kind of take it as their own, like taking ownership of their projects and I guess in the business in a sense. All right. Yeah.
I mean, you really can't find that. I mean, even on the shop level, everybody feels entitled to doing something, and it's like, well, we're all entitled that we get a paycheck at the end of the week, whether, as long as they feel it's their name, they're responsible for that name or that part or that product or that service work. I mean, that's a trait that's definitely not in abundance.
And so you actually, there's one thing you don't have the difficulty that, like, say, a performance shop does is in a performance shop, and actually probably even when you were doing your part sales, is anybody who works for you can the very next day quit and go do the same thing on their own.
Yeah, that's one of the things. What's funny is going way back when we were kind of trying to expand or figure out which areas we wanted to really produce parts for us. We decided to choose something that the barrier to entry was pretty high, mm-hmm. because we needed to have the skill set to be able to to create the designs, but also, the ability to buy the machines and learn how to work on them and learn how to produce parts with them, versus, the guys that make exhausts and, headers or turbo kits. Technically, their specialty equipment is a saw and a welder.
All right.
And I can promise you do not want to see if I get welding. There would be nobody buying it.
Okay, so I mean, you're obviously in a market now that has extremely high barrier to entry, like both in technical skill and the financial burden of buying these machines is very high. You can't just go to a bank and say, I want a $100,000 CNC machine, and you're going to need $50,000 in tooling to make that machine work, right? I mean, it's pretty expensive to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I would say that first machine probably costs $250,000 without a doubt, between tooling, screwing up the machine itself, and the software that's needed to really program, design. We already kind of had the design stuff, but to do it right, it's absolutely going to take that much.
Okay. And what are you using to manage your people? Do you have a manager working for you, or do you do it all yourself?
Between Travis and myself, we kind of do most of that ourselves. Our scheduling and engineer does a lot as well. Okay. Operators, they get shown correct ways to do things, and they care about what they do, and they have prints to follow. So,
okay. Are you running more than one shift, or is 2 shifts, 3 shifts?
We kind of run a swing, so we run 10 hours.
Okay. So you have all these machines and all the people coming, and most of them are obviously involved with manufacturing. You probably have do you have sales staff? Do you have kind of break it down, like who's doing what there?
We don't have what we would call a direct sales staff. Our business, we kind of went the way of distribution goes, because I looked at the businesses that were in our industry, the Grettis, the HKSs, and I didn't really like the fact that they had these sales guys. I can remember a sales guy at Gretty would call us up after we kind of just made the switch and was like, "Hey, we got some cams coming in for the Evo. Can you help us sell them?" And I'm like, "We make cams for the Evo. Why would I want to sell them? Your cams? Well, you can sell them ours." I'm like, "Yeah, no." I was like, "I don't want anything to do with yours." And we went down the idea as, we really want to go to the distribution format. We want the guys that are talking to people on a daily basis to be able to have the education and the knowledge to really promote and sell the products. I mean, we work with, Turn 14 and Rally Sport and, Real Street, and even, the guys down at Titan, and, really around to utilize their sales force, so to speak. It's not every day somebody buys a set of cams or a valve train kit. It's the shop owner is going to probably tell the customer which way they're going to need to go at this point. And we're not talking to every one of those shop owners every day, but those guys are, because they're selling them all kind of parts.
Okay, so it sounds like you are willing to take a little bit less on the margin yourself in order to let somebody else do the sales of the product. That's what you're...
Absolutely. I mean, to us, that's the difference. Kind of, we you've got a lot of manufacturers in our industry that really aren't manufacturers. They're distributors that design. They might design the parts and they resell them, but they have big sales forces because they need to sell those parts. We have a big manufacturing force, and we need to concentrate on making the parts better. So taking a little bit off the top, letting the sales guys that do it on a daily basis take over, that is really the way that we've positioned the business.
Okay, and you do some. You have some like authorized dealers that are shops directly. Do you have do you do buy-in models, or do you know people who are reputable shops and you pick them up as like a authorized GSC seller, or how do you handle that?
We do kind of a weird tailored market in that, we aren't working on the cars as much as, for sure not as much as we used to. And we always like to work with somebody who's pretty vested in an application. At least it helps us better our product by, getting feedback from them.
So English is a good example, right? You were
English
hand in hand with them, right?
Yeah, I mean, the guys out at English are great. They make our job pretty easy. I mean, they put stuff in, they play with it. If they don't like something about it, they might come back and say, "Hey, we don't like this. This isn't working right," or "We've had problems with this," or there have been huge helps in that respect. And everybody still has to get hit with a buy-in, but to be honest, it's one of those things that, like I said, there's not every day that you're putting cams in a car. Well, maybe on an Evo, but for most of the shops to try to say, "Hey, I want to do a buy-in with GSC so we can sell their product," I can tell you from being on both sides of the business, that's not a smart business plan. The best thing going is to call me when you need help with a cam profile pick for an application, and then get it from the distributor that you're probably getting 2 to 3 orders a week from.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention that they probably have it on their shelf, and if you bought it from me, you could be waiting up to 2 to 3 months for it.
Gotcha. So your primary source of revenue obviously is all manufacturing. Then you don't really do any parts sales. You're not doing any service. Do you provide engineering services at all for people?
We do offer some private label, like where we produce products for other companies.
Mm-hmm.
Engineering side of stuff, we've dabbled some in doing some kind of not really related to our direct industry.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit, nothing major. I wouldn't even give it like a 2% part of the business model, but I would say we're probably 90%, 85% vested in reselling our own product. That other 5 to 10% is probably towards private label.
Okay. And are you doing any advertising or marketing?
We do sponsor a couple of the forums just so that we can kind of answer questions. We don't really do any marketing per se as far as magazine stuff. We don't do trade shows, and not because we don't want to. We simply don't have the time to really focus on what we would feel comfortable putting time into doing that.
And with your product selling as fast as you can make it, I mean, there's really no need to work on generating more business at the moment, right?
I mean, it becomes a point of you really want to make people feel happy and understand the company that they're buying products from.
Mm-hmm.
If you see it all over the place and you're using it, you kind of feel good about it. So I would say that one of the things we do want to work on is actually advertising, and it's really just so that people kind of know who we are a little bit more.
Okay. So you're going for name recognition more so than selling more product then is what you would be targeting.
Yeah. I mean, that would be the case. I mean, I
would say with the Evo market, I mean, I think you have it in the bag because I can't even remember the last time I sold a Kelford cam, and pretty much the only thing I install now are your cams. And most of the time it's taking other people's cams out and putting yours in. So.
Well, as much as I love to hear that, it kind of is the case. I mean, we do really well in the markets that we are in, and we do concentrate well on them. We do a lot in the Subaru stuff. We do a lot in the Toyota market. I mean, the Toyota Supra, as crazy as it is, it was such a rocky start. I remember when we got the blanks to make those, and it's like, I'm never going to sell 100 sets of these ever, because I don't think there's 100 people modifying these cars still. And I mean, that was like, I don't even know. We don't even know when that was. 5 or 6 years ago. And good Lord, I was wrong about that one. Those guys I can't tell you, it never ceases to amaze me when somebody calls in with a super related question. And then it's like, okay. And I have this thought that they had the same car I do. And it's like, no, I'm putting in a Fox body Mustang. And I'm like, you're going to put a 2J in a Fox body? And yeah. All right. That's different. Sounds good. But, pickup trucks and Volvos, and I mean, that motor is just great for all that stuff. It's fun.
All right.
So,
have you done any, like you said you haven't done trade shows just because of the time commitment, and obviously they're expensive. Are you sponsoring cars at all? Or, I mean, you said you're sponsoring forums, but what about like Facebook and social media stuff?
So I am probably the worst Facebook social media individual known to man, because I feel like I have a Facebook page, and every time I used to go to it, all I would see is like high school and college friends of mine taking pictures of their kids all the time, and that's just boring. So I kind of wrote off Facebook way back when. So we don't, we have a Facebook page, and, you know, the other two guys kind of up front definitely play around with that a lot more than I do. I don't even know what's on it.
All right. What about sponsoring cars?
You know, sponsoring cars is one of those things that it's really hard for us to do because we are really making the parts to gain the performance that they need. So the other side of it is really getting people that really want to give back. I mean, we sponsor, we do some stuff with Mark Yeager in the Subaru world, and he's been kind of like a breath of fresh air of somebody that I've kind of enjoyed watching him campaign his car. And you know, we prepared some cams and did some stuff for him the other day because, you know, he didn't ask for them, but it was like, hey, I wanted to try this because I think we can, you know, pick up a little bit of his, you know, turbo spool on the bottom end on the size turbo that he's in. So let's make him some and send him to him because we think he's doing a good job.
Yeah, I actually talked to Mark, it was probably early January, and exactly about that reason is he is, you know, the grassroots racer who actually takes it very seriously. His sponsors and getting the name out and marketing himself as well as all the people that are giving him stuff. And it's really, I can't say how good he is doing. I mean, he is doing such a good job of it, and I wish other people would kind of look at him as a model to do that.
You know, he's definitely got when he called up and is like, hey, this is what I'm doing, you know, can we do a sponsorship? And it's like, you know, we get emails every day that are, you know, hey, I'm doing this build and I want you to sponsor my car. And it's like, well, I don't know who you are and I don't know what you're going to do. And I doubt you're even going to do what you say you're going to do. So if I even answer it anymore, it's a miracle. But he's just one of those guys like, I'm not asking for anything for free. You know, I just want a little bit of help. And I'm just like, well, you know, he sent us some pictures and I was like, you're really going to do all this? And he's like, yeah. So I was like, it's going to be on your dime. He's like, yeah, as much as, you know, I don't want it to be, it is. And I said, you know what, we'll help you out. Let's see how it goes from there. And yeah, he's really a grassroots guy that really, you know, enjoys it, gets out there, and he can enjoy it. So, you know, like I said, that kind of sponsorship stuff, you know, I really like it, especially after the fact when it kind of does pay off.
Mm-hmm. Are you patenting any of your products at all, or do you just kind of roll with you being able to supply it and other people can't do it?
You know, that's part of it. You know, in the end, you can't really patent a camshaft because it's already produced for a direct engine. So trying to patent a low profile shape isn't really going to work because the patent office doesn't really care that, you know, you change something for a specific application that's going to work with these parts. So, okay. You know, that being said, no, we've never tried to do that. We don't have any, if we come across anything in the future that would necessitate it, yes, I know the proper procedures for doing it. And if it's something that's going to be worthwhile that could be snatched up by an auto manufacturer to run, we would.
Okay. And you haven't had, I don't think, any issues with people copying your product yet, have you?
Yeah, we've had people not really copying. It was really more in the cast. We constantly get emails of people trying to sell other cams and components as GSC that weren't or are not. So it's kind of unfortunately that it's not directly related to somebody stealing our designs or product, but it kind of hits the end consumer that's, you know, hey, I bought these cams. Are these really yours? And it's like, I have no idea what that is.
All right. How many hours a week are you working?
Without a doubt, 60. I mean, I'm usually in the office at 6:30 and I'm usually out of here at 6:15-ish.
Okay, so 10 hours a day, 6 days a week? Or sorry,
I mean,
12,
last time I checked, that's 12.
12 hours a day, yeah. It's 7 a.m. still for me. I'm still before I wake up.
if you want to learn how to get something done, you need to get up and get motivated in the morning. I mean, I can tell you that I get more done before 9 o'clock and before the phones start ringing than I probably do from after lunchtime because it's just one of those things that there's too many distractions.
Okay. Do you have a family at all?
I do. I'm married.
Kids?
No kids. Just a Bernese Mountain Dog that comes to work with me every day.
Okay. And does your wife, does your hours bother her at all?
Yeah, I usually get an angry text if it's after 6:30 30 if I'm not at least on the way. So I've learned that I need to at least call and say, hey, I'm coming home, so that you don't get mad at me. But yeah, the weekends are, we don't run over the weekends. So there's a lot of times when I'll be up here either kind of going over SolidWorks drawings or, parts, or maybe programming something new, or, even just typical book work.
Okay. Are you spending your time managing the business, or do you find yourself like running the CNC machine most of the time? Like, are you the guy that is the guy who wants to be just head down working and let somebody else run the shop?
No, I mean, I do. To be honest, I do both. I actually do almost all of the programming in-house.
Okay.
So as far as that goes, yeah, like the first run off of a part, I'm constantly in front of the machine. But for the most part, I'm in the office doing working on the business.
Okay. Does the pay justify the time spent?
It depends what you consider pay. I mean, I think there's a lot of self-gratitude in what I do and what we do, as far as, you get to make something that started as a big old block of steel or titanium, so I get a smile on my face when we make a minor change to something that probably half the people never even knew existed, or we, shave 30 seconds off of a cycle time, and that's going to allow us to maybe get a set of cams to a customer, that wasn't able to get them.
Okay.
So, financially speaking, so much of everything that we make kind of really just gets rolled back into new equipment, new processes, things along those lines that I don't really get to see it. I don't get to drive a Ferrari and play. I buy more CNC machines.
But you can write yourself a paycheck.
Without a doubt. I mean, that was one of the biggest things that I think is probably a benefit for a business as a whole, is to, if you need a paycheck out of it, you need to make sure that you write a paycheck and not just say, oh, I need, some money for this week or whatever. I mean, I know when you're starting out and getting stuff going, I mean, we made the mistakes back when we were really, back in the beginning of, you do whatever you can to survive. And, but once you get to the point where you can write yourself a paycheck to live off and not kind of dip, so to speak, it really helps the business as a whole.
Okay. And the people you're working for, do you provide them with any benefits? Are you doing like health insurance,
Yep.
like any 401k stuff?
Yeah, we do.
Okay. And you said SolidWorks is one of the things you're using for design work. What other tools are you using as far as like managing the business, running the machines? Kind of give us an idea of what you're doing there.
We use we use SolidWorks for most of the design and 3D stuff modeling. We use some of their add-ons. They have a flow simulation product that we add as an add-on that's quite costly, but it's very beneficial for especially modeling, the cylinder head, and then, kind of flow over valves and stuff along those lines. I don't know how to use that, by the way, but
it's a CFD tool for SolidWorks, right?
Yeah, okay. I just wrote the check for it. That's all I can tell you. I use a company called Edge Cams, CAD cam software, which, we have full 5-axis and 4-axis milling, and then we, basically have a 7-axis twin turret turning machine that we make cams on. So, that software suite is usually hanging out open on my desktop with some kind of cam in it with a tool path on it. And then we use an ERP system as far as our accounting. So we kind of outgrew the Sage and QuickBooks stuff as far as needing to track lots as far as material and lots that we run, manufacturing kind of items.
Okay, so that's a very manufacturing specific accounting system.
Yeah, it's an ERP, MRP system.
Okay.
So enterprise resource planning and manufacturing resource planning based.
Okay. And what are some things that you do differently that make yourself successful that others might not have thought about?
Get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, I still can't do that.
I'm telling you, I think it's one of the best things you can do is if you learn that you can get out of bed in the morning and get to it, even if you knock out earlier, 3 or 4 o'clock. You'd be surprised it's at what you can accomplish first thing in the morning. And I'll be perfectly honest with you. I used to love this industry when everything was West Coast based, and it was like, there was no point calling anybody until noon because you could not find anybody on the East Coast.
Yeah, and I'm actually about to join you here in early mornings when my kid starts kindergarten. So then I'll have to start waking up early. So maybe I'll find the success that everyone talks about by working early in the morning.
It's there. My grandfather used to always do it, and I always thought he was crazy, but he always preached that, and somehow I ended up living it. So it seems to work out pretty well.
Okay, so we just talked about how Greg handles his business and how he takes a very professional approach to it. So we want to talk about this class at the EFI University a second. EFI University is hosting a new class called Essentials of Operating a Shop. If you're interested in learning how to run your shop more efficiently, this class is for you. For details and to find a class near you, go to EFI101.com and look for the Essentials of Operating a Shop class. Our next class is being held in Houston, Texas on August 13th, followed by Chicago, Illinois on September 3rd. Be sure to use the coupon code DIFAL for $50 off when you sign up. Moving into the last long answer questions, what's something that you struggle with business and how do you deal with it?
Finding good employees that really care is a big struggle. We've overcome, all of the real heartache as far as, getting to where we are, as far as financing and things along, the business, OSHA and all of that stuff. So we've kind of brought all of that, up with us. So I don't really consider it a struggle, but finding personnel that really care about what they do.
Do you structure their work day? Like, do you have like a real set directions on what to do every day for them?
Yeah, I mean, especially in the operators, the 3 or 4 of us that are kind of on the management side of it, they don't really have structural every day. We do a couple of meetings a week that we go over kind of, longer term items, and then kind of weekly items. But as far as on the shop floor, it's very repetitive. They have to, parts that come out of, even though they are CNC, they do have, tolerances that they have to maintain. They have to document, every critical, dimension, at least one out of every 5 is actually documented, even though we might be checking every part in a critical dimension. And then we also run what's called an ADCOL 911 gauge, which is a very complex or a CMM-based kind of cam measuring solution. Okay. It measures to I don't even know what the term is, but it's like 7 decimal places in millimeters. Which is kind of amazing because if you put your hand on it and put a little body heat in it and remeasure like a diameter of a journal, you can actually get it to adjust about 2 or 3 microns, or the third decimal, probably 1 or 2 microns on the third decimal places, and it's pretty impressive as far as that goes. But so is the bill to keep that certified every year. So
yeah, those tools for measuring are very expensive. Huh?
Yeah, I mean, that's, but if you want to do it right, that's kind of one of those things that you have to, it's not as much fun. I don't know. I guess we learn from so much of what's already out there, meaning like the OEM cams have certain things that are attributed to them or what we've done. And then, when we want to measure something and know exactly what it is, that's really good information. I mean, if we have an end customer that calls and is like, "Oh, we measured your valve guide; it's not the right diameter," and it's like, I don't know what you're measuring it with, and I can guarantee that your micrometer is not calibrated and probably doesn't even hold a coin to what we have in the back that's measured. But I'll take your opinion on it.
Okay, and do you have? You kind of mentioned that you have a non-formal plan for the business for 5 years. What about like this coming year? Do you do forecasting for new models coming out? Do you buy new product? Like say the Focus RS, is that something you're going to be developing stuff for?
One of the things about the internal components or like the valve train stuff, as much as people want us to jump in and be the first to market, or we want to be the first to market, it really takes a while for the cars to catch up, or people to kind of get into those markets. So if a car comes out and it's there for 1 year, we're going to kind of look at it, stand back and watch, and we're going to listen to what some of the guys that are making the little bit easier to fabricate parts for and see how the market is before we're going to spend, the big bucks on tearing a head apart and going into it. I mean, we're going into the FA20, the WRX FA platform right now. So that'll probably, it's on the 2017 plan. We are going to do some stuff with the EcoBoost just because it does cross share onto the Mustang a little bit. And as much as I don't necessarily want to end up in the domestic side of things,
there are a lot of them.
There are a lot of them, and Ford, over the years I've always kind of looked at what Ford does, at least with overhead cam stuff, and it really fits into what we do and know. We'll dabble there a little bit, and I hate to say it, but there's no more Mitsubishi Evo after this year. As much as I wish there was, there's got to be a competitor to the STI, and if it happens to be the Focus RS, we'll be there to support it as well.
Okay. And what's kind of your 5-year plan? What are you looking at for that?
It's one of those things that we've really become very interested in what a lot of our like head porters are doing. David Head Games, is pretty entertaining to chat with, and listening to him. He's given us a lot of help on our valve guides. He called up complaining. He's like, I need a valve guide that actually fits in a cylinder head. And I'm like, okay, well, that's easy enough. We have a turning center that can probably make exactly what you want. And, that was a few years ago. And ever since then, there's constantly a box showing up here from Head Games of just some random valve guide that's, hey, can you make this for me? And it's like, yeah, sure, Dave. What do you need? But really supporting those guys and the potential to add more machines and possibly do some cylinder head castings, not necessarily trying to take away from those guys, but to be able to produce kind of a bolt-on aftermarket cylinder head that can be given to a porter and taken further, or simply could be bolted on as an option for really the sport compact guys. It's going to get harder and harder to find good used cores, much less having to fork out and get a decent new core.
Yeah, I already have that problem with the Evo 9 head. They're very hard to find.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's actually a company in New Zealand that's actually working on the Evo. Well, they were working on the Evo 8 and Evo 9. They're going to do it as a single option. So it'll be interesting to see if that unfolds. And it's a very competent individual that's down there doing it. So I'm kind of curious to see how that happens for him.
Interesting. I'll have to follow that too. So, so we like to take action and do it for a living. Can you suggest an action item that our listeners can take away that can improve their situation?
Well, let's see. If I didn't already stress getting out of bed in the morning, that'd probably be the biggest thing. I think that's really the most important thing.
Okay.
Make sure you do what you love too.
Okay, and so moving on to the quick answer questions. These are just something, tell us what comes to mind first. So tell us a game-changing product that you've seen in the last year.
A game change. I mean, I'm a little biased to it all, but I would have to say the fact that we now have a forged billet camshaft that you're not going to have to worry about breaking in half because you've tripled or quadrupled the power of the base engine is pretty game changer in my direct market. Outside of that, the turbos that have just continually flown into the market have really been impressive to me of what they're capable of, and kind of given us a lot more options for the future, I think.
Okay. What software are you using daily?
SolidWorks would probably be daily. I would also say I use EdgeCam daily, and then we use our ERP, EBMS daily.
Are you using any like Outlook or anything for email, that sort of stuff?
Yeah, still using Outlook right now.
Reluctantly, right? Okay.
very, very much so. I mean, I'd love to kind of move to a system that would allow for something a little bit different, maybe a little more hands-on.
Okay. And what's your favorite app that you use daily? And this does not have to be business related. I think one of the people said a donut app for Dunkin' Donuts, but
I actually do use Dunkin' Donuts app, but I will say that it is definitely not my favorite app to use. I can, as much as I do hate Facebook, for some reason I get a kick out of Instagram, and it's not that I usually post that much on it, but I enjoy looking at pictures. So pictures speak 1,000 words. I would say Instagram's probably my favorite.
Okay. And what's your favorite shop tool?
I would say presently would be my Akuma M560V with a 4th axis on it.
And that's a milling machine, or is that
That's a vertical milling machine with a 4th axis on it.
Okay. And then what kind of car are you driving right now?
I still actually have my Supra that I've had forever, and I daily drive a CTSV wagon.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, it's definitely, I don't know, I saw one of the wagons and I was like, ooh, that's different. I like that.
I do like that car a lot, too. It's a very cool one. And honestly, I was surprised you did not say truck. I was thinking you were going to have a truck.
For some reason, I live like 25 miles away, and Charleston's traffic sucks, and it's fun having 600 horsepower to merge and get around folks.
Okay.
So it's crazy that it is. Everybody's like, "Oh, what have you done to it?" Or they ask me, David Headgames was like, "Oh man, I need to port that blower snout for you," and I'm like, "Yeah." So I've got a cold air intake on it, and unfortunately, that's as far as that car is actually gone, as scary as it is.
Still under warranty, huh?
Yeah, it's still under warranty. It's I drive it, and I have a 750 horsepower Supra in the back that I probably haven't driven in over a year. So if I want to jump in something that's go bang some gears and have some fun, I'm going to jump in that. But I need it to start up and run and not sound like it's a C6R race car at a stoplight.
Okay. And what do you think the future of automotive performance is going to be?
The future of automotive performance, in my eyes, is going to be I think we're going to take a step back from supplying a lot of the daily driver commuting kind of, let me soup up my daily driver fun cars. And I think it's going to revert more back to the maintaining a lot of the cars of the 90s and 2000s that, really, your Supras, your Evos, your Subarus, stuff that we kind of grew up playing with and we've been in, but it's going to get tough in the future with, computers and I listen to some of the stuff that the guys have to go through that tune those, and it's not as pretty a picture as it was back in the day.
Yeah. Okay. And how do we connect with you and your company?
Website, power-division.com, or, phone numbers on there. That's probably going to be the best and easiest way to get us.
Awesome. Well, Greg, I really wanted to thank you for taking some time to share your story with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Do It for a Living. You can find out more about this guest, this show, and even details about what we just talked about at our website, doitforaliving.net. Check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/doitforaliving and tell us who you want to hear from.